Following on from my VPNs are not illegal in China video, there's a couple of points that have come up through people asking questions and causing me to think about this in a slightly different way. One of those is this: who is telling us that VPNs are illegal? And the answer to that is the media. Where are the media based would be my next question. I'd ask myself that if I was looking for a source. And for the most part, it's English language media that have been sent as journalists to China to report back. Those journalists, and we all know who they are operating in China on VPNs. They have Twitter accounts or X. Some of them are posting onto YouTube channels. And here's the crazy thing. If they're anti-China, they certainly don't want China controlling their VPNs. So they are, by this logic, probably using what they call illegal VPNs. In China, they most assuredly would not be using the VPN servers provided by China Mobile or China Telecom, would they? Those companies have access to what they're doing. These are well-known journalists. One of the BBC's journalists was picked up and taken back to the police station in Shanghai during the COVID protests there in late 2022. He was released, unharmed, a little while later, and he was able to tweet. This was the pre-X days, about his experiences. The police had him in custody. He had a VPN. Nothing was done to prevent him tweeting about this a few hours later. This tells us a lot about the legality of using VPNs, doesn't it? Not only that, these international journalists, they arrive in China, they leave China, they take holidays, they pop across the border to Hong Kong or Macau, as we all do from time to time, and they carry their phones and laptops with them. Not a single person I know has ever been stopped at the border and asked if they have a VPN on their device. Why would they be stopped and asked that question? It's not like they're importing drugs or excess dollars or anything else that's illegal. It's just a means of communicating without going through the Great Firewall. And then there's another thing. They go to protests. They go to Xinjiang. They report that they've been followed or harassed, but it's always by plainclothes police. They're never followed by officers in uniform. So how are we to know that this is a police car following them and not just some random guys in a car that they've picked up on an edited video? We don't. We only have their word to go on, and let's be honest. What was once the world's most trusted media, the BBC, doesn't have much of a gentleman's code left about it, does it? Especially where China are concerned. And here's another thing. Have you noticed those times when the BBC do this? Imagine if CGTN were filming outside of a construction site in the UK. What would happen when the police arrive and tell them, as they have every right to do, stop filming? Well, if they didn't, they'd be arrested. But that's never happened to the BBC. If CGTN continued to film as well as being arrested, they'd have their memory cards taken. That's never happened to the BBC. If they continued after being told not to, they'd probably have their visas revoked as well. Even that hasn't happened to the BBC. If you ever watch the BBC or any other of those international media groups making videos that show them breaking local laws, make sure next time you're watching, you consider this one thing. How did they get out of that situation? How did they not get arrested? How were they allowed to keep their memory cards? And it wasn't because they smuggled them out of the region in condoms inside of an orifice where there's no sunshine. It's because China's authoritarian and dictatorial police, quote unquote, don't have the power to arrest them. They don't have the power to take their possessions, and they don't have the power to have them deported. And even if they did, they've never done that, have they? In fact, all the police want to do is manage social order and not profit from the ignorant antics of people in a position of social responsibility who abuse the trust given to them to provide an in-depth and unbiased analysis of any situation. There are 15.8 million subscribers on that YouTube channel of the BBC's. And they're not just being informed, they're being lied to. And they're being lied to by images sent from a totally benign situation that the journalists have turned into a drama, and then, after driving away, have probably had a great laugh because they know they've got a scoop, which is going to get them, as an earlier one did, 750,000 views. This isn't journalism. This is misinformation. This is how they lie to us. And this lie would have been sent to us on a VPN from inside China in perpetration of yet another lie. I know my followers get this, but not everyone does. On a daily basis, I have people telling me there's oppression in Xinjiang. And yet here we have the BBC telling us they're oppressed in Xinjiang, but proving by their own actions and police inaction that they weren't. If they were, we'd have no video footage of it. Then the crazy thing is they go one step further and prove their own lies when they tell us about people in China not having access to the internet except through illegal means by doing exactly what they tell us can't be done legally. And yet people still don't question this, still don't believe that they have approved VPNs. Because they're journalists, that would be a lie. Believe me, they're using one of the commercially available VPNs that they bought and carried into China. The day China does clamp down on VPNs, if that day ever comes, will be the day that the BBC in China stops reporting. And if we're honest, at least that aspect would be a good day. John Sudworth, who was the BBC's man in China at the time of that video, left here in 2021 and he went to Taiwan. He said he'd been threatened, and indeed on Twitter at the time he was threatened, by honest Chinese people who were disgusted with his lies in his reports. I don't condone that action. In fact, I abhor it. It gave him an excuse to leave. His real reason for leaving was hidden in the report, but it was just 4 words: threats of legal action. The real truth, reported in Global Times. And this is a short video that I've linked, and everyone who disbelieves me should watch this to see the real reasons. Sudworth faced legal action from Xinjiang businesses. He was also working on an expired journalist card, and he knew he had no chance of winning a lawsuit if he stayed in China. He was working illegally because his press pass had expired, and I guess he was unlikely to want to go and apply for another one, as they would probably have served him papers and a notice to attend court. If they did that, he would not have been allowed to leave. Now, don't forget, he was in China 9 years reporting for the BBC. He's a liar because the BBC must know this. They are peddling fake news. And if anyone can prove me wrong, I'm happy to retract and delete this video. I will make a public apology. There, you have it. This video was made on a VPN I purchased overseas and have been using in China for many years. I've departed and I've entered China several times, and I've personally visited Xinjiang several times, each time with my laptop and a VPN on it. I've never seen a sign of oppression. Not a single person in Xinjiang has told me or even indicated to me or even shown me through their actions that there's a problem there. There is enhanced security, and they appreciate that. I know I can go back to Xinjiang tomorrow and not be followed around. I've cycled 5,000 kilometers in the region and only once was followed by 2 uniformed police officers on an electric bike who rode with us about 30 kilometers all the way to the border of the next town, chatting happily and curiously about what we were doing. 2 foreign men and a Chinese lady. They didn't report back to their bosses asking for advice on how to handle us. They just wanted a chat. Curious, that's all. There was no reception committee for us in the next town. There were no problems in either of my cycling trips in 2014 or 2019. I can't for one moment believe that senior staff at the BBC don't already know this. If they don't, they're being lied to, and they're not smart enough to realize it. Is that even possible? Or is the real answer far more sinister? The BBC staff know, I know, and now you know. Thanks once again for watching my take on China, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.